I don't think there is another hobby on the planet like reefing, because I think we're a bit crazy. The amount of effort, the amount of, you think of how many hours you've spent cleaning, how many hours you've spent, or how many dollars you've spent on your setup, and you're so proud of that tank. It's a beautiful thing. It's like a moving picture. There is no other hobby on the planet that's the same. Nothing comes close.
Reefers, welcome to JZ Reefz. Today we have one of our newly made friend from Barrier Reef Labs, and we're gonna cover through some interesting facts that he's gonna share with us on the upcoming great product that has just recently arrived down here in Singapore. So good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Really good. Thank you very much. What do you mean by down here in Singapore? You're above us.
We were very excited to see the product finally arrive in the shore of Singapore. So maybe
Absolutely.
before we dive into the benefits of the product, could you just share with us a bit more about what Barrier Reef Labs is all about?
Sure, absolutely. Look, it started off as a bit of a brainchild between two guys on a boat that we were, myself and a good friend of mine named Luke. We're both divers. We're reefers. He's a marine biologist, actually, and so you'd say that they're the brains of the operation. Look, we were recreational diving. We're discussing a few things. We were discussing, there was actually a group of us. We were discussing, coral nutrition in general, and I was comparing the coral nutrition of a wild reef in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef. I was comparing that to, what corals feed on in a closed system, in an aquarium, in a controlled environment. There is quite a few names used as marine coral food, a very clean source of protein for corals. And we're looking at pricing. We're looking at pricing based on, what we spent on our coral reef systems, which was pretty big. Big numbers, and it was actually quite scary, compared to certain things that happen in the wild in terms of how they pick up out of the water column, and even if there was a open system, how reefers, I guess on marine biology scale, how they actually fed the corals that were in those open systems. I guess the big thing was we started talking about what are the other options are there in the reefing community. What products can we, supply? How do we make it a bit cheaper for the reefer? How do we make it a little bit more economical for the reefer? Because currently the food that we were buying at the time was, off the top of my head, about $50 for a 60-gram small jar, which is quite expensive. Now, the background, I guess, for us was that my background is in business development. It's in creating and crafting. It's basically in the realm of startup companies and businesses, and how to scale those up. And the other side of the business, which is Luke's, and now a number of other people that were involved over the years, was the marine biology testing and phase section of the business. So understanding exactly how the coral feeds, what they feed on, how that could be delivered, and how that's digested. So it was a bit of a piece together of all of those minds that developed the product. And it was about 2 years worth of testing, and about a year ago, just over a year ago, we launched. We had the product, we had the name, we had everything ready to go, and we put it into the market. And it has just gone crazy ever since, for a number of reasons. We've had the scale of economics. It's for the clean protein, high protein foods, so 60% protein and above, good fat content, and no or very little ash content, no fillers, no binders, nothing else. For that scale of food, typically people are paying quite a premium for. We just wanted to make it more economic, and that's what we've delivered, an economic version of what they're doing. The others were doing. So yeah, it was very popular. It took off straight away.
Interesting sharing. So, in your opinion, after 2 years of intensive testing, I presume, what actually made the grow formula that's in the market now so unique? As you have already shared, there's plenty of options out there for reefers like ourselves.
Yep.
So, what makes us stand out?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's a number of things. In my opinion, there needs to be three things that make you stand out as a product, as an individual from the market. Now, one of them always is going to be looking at, because the people buy on price. They do. They buy on price. So it has to be something that's competitive in the market. We are, per gram, the most competitive product on the market for that size of jar. But there's other things. For me, there was no point in my mind creating a pure powder food that has been done before and every reefer has used. What the powdered food was doing was it dilutes instantly into the water column. It's the same as the ocean. As soon as that nutrient hits the water and it raises that nutrient, the bacteria starts to break that nutrient down. Totally normal. And that's when you start to see all the spikes in chemistry and the changes. That's when you start to see that nutrition get absorbed quickly and easily by the algae. But what Barrier Reef Labs, the first product, the LPS Grow formula, that's what we actually released first. And the reason why was because that's what we were trying to combat. We were trying to get people away from using just the generic powdered foods. Into a product which is a clean product, which has still got the high protein, so the corals can still absorb that and still take that in. But at the same time, it doesn't dilute. The way that it works is you've got a micropearl, and each one of those micropearls has a coating on the outside of an extract. Now, it's essentially what that extract is. It's a carbohydrate that breaks down very quickly in the water, but doesn't change anything like a powdered food would. What it's doing is it's breaking down into amino acids. Those amino acids trigger the coral to start its feeding, so opening up. And then you deliver that high protein pearl to the food, which then starts to consume the food. The point being is that the excess food, there's always going to be excess food, but that excess food doesn't just dilute into the tank. What it's going to do is it's going to move around the tank for a short period of time. It's going to be collected by other corals. It's going to be picked up by fish, as you've seen. It's going to be picked up by the cleanup crew, as you've seen. I mean, there's hermit crabs go crazy for it. It's amazing. And then from there, it travels down the overflow. Typically, ends up in the filter sock in the waste area, where within an hour of feeding, the reefer can take that sock away, can rinse it, can wash it, can replace it. Of course, if you left it in there, don't get me wrong, if you left it in there for 2-3 days, yeah, sure, it'll break down. I mean, like anything, it will break down. But in that short term, you've still got the element of a control. It just doesn't allow those dominoes to start falling, which will then spike the nutrients in the tank. So that was the main purpose of our endeavor. And then when we finished, we concluded, we released the LPS. That's when we started with the SPS. It was exactly the same makeup, just a much smaller grain, much smaller grain size. We found through testing that the SPS corals, obviously they have a much smaller polyp size, which is why powdered food really works, because powdered food is so small that they can just pluck it straight out of the water column, which is perfect. We wanted to do the same thing that we did with LPS, deliver a micropearl, but on an ultra small level. So it's about a fourth, so 1/4 the size of the food. It's really hard to see from the bottom here. So that's where we went.
What would be your recommended kind of usage for reefers? Perhaps breaking down into individual use case, for example, a LPS dominant, SPS dominant, and perhaps even a mixed reef. What will be your recommended dosage based on your intensive testing?
To give an example, I would, for an average reefer with an average tank, whether it be an SPS or an LPS, I'd be looking at twice a week feeding, and if you're direct feeding, only really a small amount, see what they've taken in, and then leave it. Less is more. For me, if you were going to, as a starting point, I'd start with twice a week. I'd start with, a medium stock tank. Start with half a teaspoon, maybe work to a teaspoon. Mix it. I've got a guy who mixes it so thick and likes to have like a mud. I've got another guy who mixes it super thin and likes to just cast feed.
So would you like recommend it for only corals itself, or also for maybe fishes, since marine fishes in general, they also prefer some high protein food?
Look, you're absolutely right. Animals in general will always grow and get more out of a product coming from a high protein nutritional source. They need carbohydrate, protein, fats, that sort of thing. There is a high fat content as well. I mean, it's 20%, not too bad. So they do get quite a lot out of this. Fish will eat it. All cleanup crew will eat it. It's 100% reef safe. So it's you can use it on virtually anything. I mean, if something else was to eat it, that's totally fine. Primarily because of the cost of production, the cost of product, and the fact that it's very clean, it does lean towards being a coral food more than a fish food, because we all know that fish foods have like flour. Flake food is everything. God knows, and it's pieced together with flour, and it's cheap, and it's usually got colors and artificial things in it. And I said it's typically reserved for like koi ponds and goldfish. I mean, why would you feed that to your corals? We've got a few more really fantastic products on the market that are about to launch. So it's very much a stay tuned sort of and watch this space scenario. Currently, we've got 2 locations in Australia testing on an open system, and we're testing on several closed systems, actually. A certain product, which we will launch very soon, which is going to be a dry phytoplankton blend. So it's going to be like the next level of nutrition. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for the teaser. So we'll definitely stay tuned for your latest announcement. Maybe you can give a sneak peek of what the rough schedule will be like for your upcoming next product?
So we're thinking that everything should be finished, wrapped up really nicely by June. So we should be ready to launch start of July.
That's interesting. So we'll look forward to July.
As soon as it's ready to rock and roll, I'll put out a bit of an email to you and to everyone else, and a couple of posts on social media, and we'll get some testing underway again. So
Sure.
I'm really looking forward to it.
So to conclude, is there anything else that you would like to share to reefers all around the world?
For me, coming out of scenarios and businesses where it's very cutthroat, working with corals, working with the Barrier Reef Labs team, working with the people, working internationally with all our distributors, it's nothing but positivity. And it's really incredible, because once all the work is done, you can sit back and just go through videos and posts and tags of all these people that are feeding their amazing, and they spend hours a day, cleaning and maintaining and making sure that they're doing everything correctly. And then they spend thousands of dollars on these beautiful corals. And it's really beautiful to be a part of all that, because that for me is, it's far better than, it's far better than working in an office, doing any other work. When you get sent a photo of someone that says, my coral has grown like 3 times the size in 2-3 months, because I've been feeding it your food, and it's amazing, it's clean, and my nutrients are finally fine, and there's no problems and all. I mean, if that doesn't make you happy, I don't know what does. I know that there's a lot of products out there in the market, especially these days. All I can say is give it a go. At the worst case scenario, drop me an email if you hate it. I mean, tell me what your thoughts are. At this point, I haven't heard any negative feedback, so I'm really happy, really positive about how it's all come together. But I'd love to hear it. Tell me what we've done wrong. But yeah, it's all I can ask is give it a go, give it a try. We can answer any questions. If any one of your listeners or readers or watchers wants to ask any questions, reach out. Our email is hello@barrierreeflabs.com. You can drop us a line on Instagram.
That's nice to hear. For a company that's very willing to take in feedbacks from especially reefers or consumers, which primarily is your targeted audience, by the way. Yeah. Thank you for your time, for having you here at JZ Reef. So we'll catch up again, and hopefully we'll get you to share your new product upcoming soon. That's the end of our first ever interview at JZ Reefz. While this is not a sponsored video, I would like to extend my special thanks to Bojan and Barrier Reef Labs for the product sample for my own testing. Since I'm not a person who uses coral food, the concept of having amino acid and a high protein formula did make me curious to proceed with some testing. With my Clary-C fleece, it will definitely export any uneaten micro pellets that goes into my overflow, so nutrients won't be my concern. As far as the performance goes, the nutrients I find it to be quite similar to another popular brand that we saw earlier in this video. But if I do intend to feed my coral, at least I do not have to spend additional funds on a separate amino acid just to trigger feeding responses. Hopefully, the product will be arriving in our local LFS soon. But if you're impatient, I got you covered. Do check out the non-affiliated links in my description below. As Bojan mentioned, do give it a try. Thank you for watching till this far. If this video gives you any value in any ways, do drop a comment in the description below.
Why would we invest countless hours of our lives, and and there is so many people out there that do more than I do. Look, that's what it's all about. That's what we're here for. We're here because we're so passionate about this hobby.